I used to think being alone meant freedom. No parents telling you what to do. No rules about staying up late or eating junk food in front of the TV. That night, I learned that being home alone meant something entirely different. It meant being vulnerable in ways I'd never imagined, trapped in a place that was supposed to keep me safe, but instead became a cage I couldn't escape from. It was October, and the Wisconsin cold had already started creeping in through the windows. My parents had gone to bed early, exhausted from work, and I was in my room doing homework when I heard the first sound. It wasn't loud, just a soft thud against the front door, like someone had bumped into it accidentally. I paused, listening. When nothing else happened, I went back to my assignment. Then I heard it again, louder this time, followed by the sound of wood splintering and my mom's voice calling out in confusion and fear. I froze. My pencil slipped from my hand and clattered onto the desk, but I barely noticed because my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to move, to run to my parents' room or lock my door or do something, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I just sat there, paralyzed, listening to the sounds downstairs, the heavy footsteps, the muffled voices, and then the silence that followed, a silence so complete it felt like the house itself had stopped breathing. When my door opened, I saw him for the first time. He was tall, wearing dark clothes and a mask that covered most of his face, and he didn't say anything at first. He just stood there staring at me with eyes that were cold and empty. I remember thinking, this isn't real. This can't be happening. But then he stepped forward and grabbed my arm. His grip was so tight it hurt, and I knew with absolute certainty that it was real. He told me not to scream, not to fight, that if I did what he said, everything would be okay. But I knew he was lying because I'd already heard the shots downstairs. The sounds that meant my parents weren't coming to save me. He dragged me out of my room, down the stairs, past the living room where I tried not to look at what I knew was there. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and the cold air hit my face as he pulled me outside and shoved me into the trunk of his car. The last thing I saw before he slammed it shut was my house, the lights still on in the windows, the place where I'd lived my entire life now looking like a crime scene from a movie. Then everything went dark, and all I could hear was the engine starting and the sound of gravel crunching under the tires as he drove away. I don't know how long I was in that trunk. It felt like hours, my body cramped and aching, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. I thought about my parents, about whether they were still alive, about whether anyone would notice I was gone. I thought about all the things I'd never get to do. Never graduate high school, never go to college, never grow up and have a life of my own. And I thought about him, the man driving the car, wondering what he wanted from me and how far he was willing to go. When the car finally stopped, he opened the trunk and pulled me out. We were in the woods, surrounded by trees so thick I couldn't see the road anymore. There was a cabin, small and run down with boarded-up windows and a door that creaked when he pushed it open. He shoved me inside and told me this was my new home, that I'd better get used to it because I wasn't leaving anytime soon. The cabin smelled like mold and old wood, and there was nothing inside except a bare mattress on the floor and a bucket in the corner. He locked the door behind him when he left, and I heard his footsteps fading away, leaving me alone in the dark. The days blurred together after that. He came and went, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just checking to make sure I was still there. He told me his name was Jake, that he'd been watching me for months, that he'd chosen me specifically because I was perfect. I didn't understand what that meant, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to go home, to see my parents again, to wake up and realize this was all a nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real, and every day that passed made it harder to believe that I'd ever escape. I tried to keep track of time by counting the days, scratching marks into the wall with my fingernail, but eventually I lost count. Weeks turned into months, and I started to forget what my old life was like. I forgot the sound of my mom's voice, the way my dad used to laugh at stupid jokes, the feeling of being safe and normal and free. All I knew was the cabin, the cold, the fear that never went away no matter how hard I tried to push it down. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. There was something inside me, some small stubborn part that refused to accept that this was how my story would end. So I watched him, studied his routines, waited for the moment that he'd make a mistake. And one day, 88 days after he'd taken me, that moment came. He'd gotten careless, left the door unlocked while he was distracted, and I didn't hesitate. I ran. I ran through the woods, barefoot and freezing, branches tearing at my clothes and my skin. But I didn't stop. I ran until I saw a house, a woman walking her dog, and I stumbled toward her, gasping and crying, begging her to help me. She called the police, and when they arrived, they found the cabin, found him, found everything. I was safe. I was free. But even now, months later, I still feel like I'm back in that trunk, back in that cabin, back in the dark, waiting for him to come through the door. Because some things you don't escape from. Not really. They stay with you forever. A shadow that never quite goes away.